We'll have a roll call.
Hal Bynum.
Here.
Taylor Cantrell.
Here.
Moniz Hagler.
Here.
Art Sparks.
Here.
Clinton Smith. Here. Johnny Woolfolk. Here. Everyone is here.
Thank you. I think also on the phone, we have Dan Strasser. Dan is going to be one of the members that will be coming on board. He will not vote on anything. He can listen, but because he has not been confirmed by the legislature. We have another person who will be coming on, I guess, in probably the June meeting, Tanya Reynoldsson, and she is not with us today either, but we certainly welcome both of those people here. It says that I should have some opening remarks, and Yancey should. My opening remarks are like they've always been. This is an open meeting. We're on a board here, and every one of us needs to speak up if you have any questions from any of our presenters. If you have any comments, we certainly want to hear them. They want to hear from us also. Yancey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am so thankful to be here, and just a couple of quick thank yous to some folks. First, to this Campus Advisory Board, thank you for leaning into the service and for the work that you are doing to help the campus. Most folks don't have any idea the work that goes into planning this meeting and communicating information and everything that happens prior to the meeting happening. So thank you so much for leaning in. We had and most folks don't know that you're not just here for this meeting, but we see you at all different places. We had a outstanding admissions event last night in Jackson, Tennessee, and Mr. Woolfolk was there. And so I embarrassed him just a little bit in that event, but thank you for continuing to serve and continuing to help. One other thank you that I want to do publicly is to just say thank you to everybody. Last week was a tough start of the spring semester. We ended up having to cancel class and, close campus, administratively close campus because of the weather. We had about 8 days of just unbelievable cold that happened here in our area and across Tennessee because the regional centers were impacted as well. But I want to say just a special thank you to our physical plant folks who were here when everybody else was home, to our campus safety folks who were here, to the grounds folks who were here. What a tremendous job they did to be here, to keep the campus safe, to ensure that the buildings were ready to go when we came back to campus, to do salt down on the sidewalks for areas across campus so that folks could be safe. So a special thank you to them. I'm excited about this agenda. There is a lot of meat here in the agenda today, and look forward to answering questions that the advisory board has. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, first item of business is the approval of minutes. I believe they were emailed out maybe before. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions from those? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion that we accept the minutes.
So moved.
We have is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, roll call vote.
Hal Bynum. Taylor Cantrell. Moniz Hagler.
Yes.
Art Sparks.
Yes.
Clinton Smith.
Yes.
Johnny Woolfolk.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Dr. Freeman for recognition of our outstanding professors.
Well, I am thrilled to have an opportunity to recognize two of our outstanding faculty members at this time. The enterprise of who we are and what we do is teaching, but a lot more goes into that because there is a care ethic that happens on this campus that is absolutely amazing, and I think these two individuals really define that in a lot of ways. So receiving the University of Tennessee Alumni Association Outstanding Teacher Award will go to two recipients at UTM. They are Dr. Jason Roberts and Dr. Janet Wilbert. If I could get them to please stand, and if we could perhaps applaud them for a second. I'm going to ask them to continue to stand because I want to read a little bit of a bio on them. I told them I was going to embarrass them just a little bit, but Dr. Jason Roberts, a veterinarian, is the director of the University of Tennessee at Martin Veterinary Technology Program and professor in the Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Geosciences. He is the founding director of the Veterinary Technology Program and helped establish a new degree in veterinary science and technology at UT Martin. He also teaches, advises, and coordinates the pre-vet medicine program. Dr. Roberts has earned multiple teaching and advising awards, including the 2013 UT Martin Outstanding Advisor Award, the 2015 Coffee Outstanding Teacher Award, and the 2017 University of Tennessee President's Award for Outstanding Educator. Dr. Janet Wilbert is an associate professor in the Department of Health and Human Performance since her hire in August of 2000. She has been instrumental in teaching and working with many pre-professional students who have gone on to become great athletic trainers, physical therapists, occupational therapists, and many other healthcare professionals. She was recognized with the Outstanding Advisor Award in 2008. She loves teaching and especially enjoys it when her students connect theory and practice. Dr. Wilbert was inducted into the Tennessee Athletic Trainers Society Hall of Fame in January 2013. I think it deserves another big round of applause for both of our faculty members. We are going to get to celebrate them again at the Honors Day program, and then in June, they're going to be celebrated and receive a quick, wonderful financial monetary gift as a product of this. We're not telling how much so that they can keep it secret. So congratulations to both of them.
We gave them lunch.
Yeah, I mean,
What's the deal? That's good, though. Very two deserving individuals, no doubt about it. Next item on our agenda is the employee engagement survey results. I'm going to ask Petra McPherson and Michael Washington to make their presentation.
Lindy assured me that the clicker's gonna work, so we're gonna see if that happens. Well, good afternoon. The UT system engages McLean and Company to conduct an employee survey annually, and we've been doing this for a number of years. It's an access across the UT system, and it's an opportunity for us to hear where employees are, get feedback, and this is a staff engagement survey. Soon to be Dr. Michael Washington will provide an overview of some of the outcomes of those surveys and things that we want to do in effort to make opportunities out of the information that was gathered in the survey.
Thank you, Petra. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm delighted to present some highlights from our most recent employment engagement survey. As you can see on the screen, it's when it was administered last year. And so today we'd like to review some of the highlights from that survey. So we'll go with the first slide here. One of the things I want to point out, the survey is grouped into what they call organizational drivers. So it's just those main topics or those main areas that we as a university want to focus on. So that's one way to think about that. So some key takeaways in terms of scores, the division sees an improvement in every measure of engagement compared to the previous period. The drivers to see the most improvement in scores were recognition, career advancement and development, and employee empowerment. Our overall comment theme highlights several areas of concerns within the organization. These includes disparities in pay and remote work opportunities, a lack of communication between departments, issues with attendance, abuse, and favoritism, and a need for improved training and career advancement opportunities. While there are positive aspects such as friendly colleagues and a good work environment, there is a clear call to action to address these challenges and create a more equitable and supportive workplace. Slide. So here we have the overall engagement results. Overall participation rate last year was 49%, which is really a great number. Overall percentage of engaged employees is 64%, so we're really excited about that. While that's really a strong positive number, obviously 64% indicates there's still some room for improvement. When it comes to disengagement, we're at 6.3. Obviously, you would like that to be 0, but I don't know if that's practical, but there's an opportunity for us to even improve in that regard as well. Next slide. So our overall employee experience score, as you can see, it says the Employee Experience Monitor is a one-question survey designed to help managers identify dips and spikes in their team's level of engagement. It is based on the Net Promoter Score used in marketing. So we just really focus on the fact that this is the Employee Experience Monitor, and it's at 42%. At first glance, that may look like a low number, but what you need to understand in interpreting these results is that that scale can be from a -100 to 100. So for us to be landing at 42%, that's a pretty positive number for us. And then it says the percentage of supporters is 53% and detractors 11%. Care Browns, Department of Agriculture and Geosciences, and Natural Resources had a negative employee monitor experience of -50%. So clearly, in those areas, and what this is doing for us is just highlighting those departments that participated that scored at the lowest level, and so it's indicated by that 50. Next slide. So here's another organizational driver, career advancement and development. How do employees feel about that? So the overall score was 57%, and so then it kind of goes down to other categories by age. The younger than 25 age group scored 13 to 18% more than other groups. What's interesting about that, in the survey the year before, we found that our young professionals, 35 and younger, were the most disengaged. So for us in the most recent survey, get this kind of response, we're making some improvement with that group. So this is exciting to see. Organizational unit, Care Browns Financial Aid, Student Health and Counseling, and the Office of Universal Relations received the lowest between 11 to 36%. Even though this is part of the highlight that we're doing today, strategies that we use for departments who are scoring lower from one year to the next are still strategies that we would use universally, because we don't want to, sleep at the wheel on anything. So even though somebody may be doing positively this year, if we're implementing a strategy for a department that did not do as well, then we're going to do that universally so that we can keep pace, if that makes sense. Okay, my direct supervisor, this is just one of the questions from the survey. My direct supervisor discusses professional development with me outside of my annual performance review. Exempt employees scored 14% more than non-exempt. One of the strategies that we're going to be employing over the next year is teaching managers or training managers to engage their employees more throughout the year, having performance conversations about professional development and how they're doing. So there's an opportunity there for us. And so this points to that. The next slide. Okay, that's the slide. Okay, I didn't turn quick enough. Okay, so this organizational driver is department leadership and employee engagement. So the overall score, as you can see, is 71%, is very high. White employees scored 10% more than black employees. Males scored 10% more than females. And then as you're looking at it from a departmental level, student health and counseling and care of grounds were poor performing between 13 to 18%. So that tells us we need to kind of look a little bit more closely at those departments and what can we do differently, what can we do better to help them get that score up. And then when we look at academic records, finance and administration, infant stimulation program, and the information tech services, they scored the highest between 95 and 98%, which is almost 100%. So what we can really learn from that is, what are they doing? What are they drinking? And so, you know, we need to get a cup of that. And so that's an opportunity where we can look internally. We don't have to try to reinvent the wheel. We can say, hey, guys, what are you guys doing, and see if we can mimic that in other departments. Next slide. Now, the next organizational driver is executive leadership. So our overall score in this category was 62%. And so if you look at it as they break it down a little bit more, white employees scored 14% more than black employees. My campus, here's the question. My campus institute's executive leadership team acts on employee feedback. So here's what they said about that. Male employees scored 16% more than female employees. The bursar at 0%, followed by admissions, care of grounds, college library, Department of Agriculture, Geoscience, and Natural Sciences. And the departments that you see before you score between 13% to 25%. So there's some opportunities to do some improvement there under that organizational driver, executive leadership. Next slide, please. So the department leadership and employee empowerment. So the overall score was 71%. So that's for everyone who participated in the survey. So that's a very high score. But as you can see, there's some room for improvement. And so white employees in this category scored 10% more than black employees. Males scored more than 10% more than female. And then you can see for yourself the departments and how they scored. Student health and counseling, care of grounds again. And as you can see, there's a theme kind of going here. Student health has kind of popped up several times. Care of grounds has popped up several times. So that signals to us in the leadership, okay, here's some departments we need to look at to see if we can improve those numbers. And then in the other departments that you see listed here, academic records and the rest of them, again, very high scoring at 95% to 98%. So again, those could be models for us to see what we could do and how we can extrapolate that across the campus to other departments. Next slide, please. The category of inclusion, 78%, really high score. White employees in this category scored 23% more than black employees. Here's the question. I have not been discriminated against at UT based on age, gender, sexual orientation, religion, or ethnicity. There was a decreasing trend in scores as the age increased from 100 to 78. So that's saying as it's decreasing, there was a decreasing trend in scores as the age increased. So that means that as you're looking at older employees, the number decreased. So there's some opportunities there again. So as you can see throughout all the slides, we're really performing pretty well in a lot of categories, but even when we're performing well or high, there's still an opportunity to do better. Wouldn't we want to see 90% in every category? I don't know if that's achievable, but it's a goal that we can try to strive for. Okay, next slide, please. Manager relationships, our next category, is 72%. That's a good score. Male employees, once again, so we're seeing a trend where it seems like almost in every major organizational driver, men are scoring at a higher clip than women. So that's signaling something to us. And then it says, my supervisor effectively handles poor performance with my team. And then again, you can see some of the same departments are coming up both on the low end of the scoring and then on the high end. And next slide, please. So here's some strategies. One of the things I want to say about the employee experience before I get into some other things. compensation is always one of those categories where employees want us to do more. I think we, over the last couple of years, have developed some really great strategies around compensation, trying to spread our allocations from the salary pool from the state as best as we can. One of the areas that we really have been focusing on is getting our lowest paid employees who were making, $10 an hour a couple of years ago. Last year, during the salary pool allocation, we were able to get them up to $13 an hour. Our long-term strategic goal in that category is to get employees up to a minimum of $15 an hour. And then the other thing that we're focusing on from a compensation standpoint is with our new market range compensation structure, a lot of our employees who have experience that should be above the 25 percentile in that market range are below the 25 percentile. So that remains one of the strategies. When funds permit, we're trying to get employees who should, based on their years of experience, should be at the 25 percentile or higher, closer to the 25 percentile. But as you know, when we get funds, we have to try to do a whole lot of things with the limited funds that we get. And so those are strategies that we're still working on. This year, the chancellor has asked me to impanel a special compensation committee comprised of both exempt and non-exempt employees to look at additional strategies that we may be able to come up with. And I'm not really ready to release any of what we've talked about so far, but just know that we've met 3 times already, and I'm getting some really good input from this committee. So I just wanted to pause for just a minute to talk about the compensation piece, because no matter how many times we do these presentations, compensation will always be one of those things that employees are talking about that we need to do more and to do better. But also, we want to talk about a few other strategies. Not this current survey or last year, but the year before last, as I mentioned a moment ago, our young professionals, 35 and younger, were the most disengaged. So one of the things that I did last year was to hold 3 different young professional focus groups. And we took a deep dive to say, hey, tell us more. What can we do differently? What can we do better? I will share a couple of things that they said. One of the things they said, you know, you guys pick the same people to serve on committees. You guys pick the same people for awards. You really don't engage us. They also said they don't know who the other young professionals on campus are. So one of the things that we're doing, and we'll be doing this semester, is hosting a mixer. And I'm going to get the young professionals to I'm going to let them decide how they want to do the mixer, so they'll meet other people around campus. And so we're really excited about that, and we think using focus groups can be a tool for other groups that we need to talk to do a deeper dive. So we're really excited about that. Let's see. I think I said everything that's on here. Let's see. Oh, yeah, so here are the comments that the young professional said is about nominating and appointing people to special committees and groups. So these are all of the things that we're going to be working on with young professionals to kind of shore up and try to get our performance up in those categories. I think there's one more slide. Okay, the other thing, too, that we think would really engage all levels of employees is something that I'm working on now, is developing a succession planning model. What I will share with you today, or can share with you today, is that we're going to look at a 5-pronged approach: job shadowing, I hope I can remember them all, mentoring, stretch assignments, career action planning, and of course, you can always remember 4, you can't remember the 5th one. Leadership storytelling. So those are going to be the 5-pronged pillars that we're going to look at to engage people and look at key positions in terms of succession planning. And so we're really excited about this because, you know, a lot of times when you think about succession planning, you only think about trying to get people seated for the top level positions. But one of our strategies that we're going to do here is to look at both our middle management level too. So that does a couple of things for us. It gives us greater coverage in the long term, but at the same time, it gives us more opportunities to engage more employees because everyone's not going to ascend to the very highest levels within the university. But there will be a greater complement of employees who can ascend at least to the middle level. So in that way, we feel like we're engaging a greater pool of employees. Let's see. The other thing that we're working on is implementing an onboarding, and this came in part from the young professionals' feedback. They were saying that they felt that human resources did a good job in their employee orientation and onboarding, but that there was a disconnect once they got to the department level and feeling like they were onboarded properly, or there was some intentionality behind onboarding. So one of the things that I've been working on in the last couple of months is I have developed a standardized onboarding checklist that all managers will get when they get a new employee, and it tells them, are their desks prepared? Do they have their supplies? Who are their most frequent contacts and things like that? So we're really excited about that project, and we think it's going to do a lot to make all employees feel more engaged when they join the university. And let's see what else we have. So I think that's it. So at this point, I'll entertain any questions if there's some.
Just as a point of clarification, because I'm a literal guy, you started off by saying that this is a one-question survey. Is it actually one question for each one of the topics?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Which makes sense because I saw the quotes in there.
Yes, sir.
Secondly, how often do you do this?
It's an annual survey.
Is there any logic to doing it more often than annually? Because you have some of these people that are embarrassingly low, some of the departments.
Yes, sir.
That needs improvement, and I would think you would want to judge that more often than annually.
So when you say judge that, are you meaning to administer the survey in its totality more frequently?
I would think if that's the way you're gathering your information, although I'll look at Petra and assume that doesn't cost more to do that, but
What I was,
again, if I look at something annually, it's very difficult to judge the low performance on how they're doing.
here's what I think we are finding is that the annual survey is effective as long as we're mounting strategies to address it. I think that's where we make our greatest stride is, okay, so here's what we found out, then what are we going to do about it? And that's also part of the unofficial feedback that we get from employees is it's one thing to assess or ask me my opinion and my advice or how I'm feeling. What are you doing about it? And so that's why we're developing strategies to do that. So I think that will bridge the gap between, even though we're only doing annually, we're really spending the rest of the time trying to come up with strategies to address that.
One other thing I would like to add is that, again, this is a UT system survey.
Okay.
And we do have an opportunity to do pulse surveys, which could be done more frequently. And it's usually very simple, maybe 1 to 5 questions at most. So we have an opportunity to do that independent of the McLean Company.
I know, Petra, that I will sometimes get these surveys, and if it's 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm really busy, I probably don't put as much thought into it as if I actually sit there and thought. So, doing it once a year, I'm not sure you would get exactly what my feelings were. And that's just a thought.
I think you raise a really good point, and I think to what Petra is saying, I think we could use what you're talking about to do it more frequently with the pulse and looking at the lower performing categories and use that pulse survey opportunity, that we could do that more frequently rather than the whole survey. So that's a great idea, and I think we can implement that.
I understand math enough that if we could improve the low scoring ones, that will raise your average up a lot quicker than improving the medium ones, needless to say.
We'll take that suggestion and we'll do something with it. Okay, anyone else?
In my, to further that point, in my first managerial job, my direct supervisor told me, only expect if you follow with inspect. And the pulse, the pulse surveys that you speak of, a year's a long time. If you're trying to improve something, a quick estimate of effectiveness is, I could see being really, really helpful. You could lose lots of employees in a year's time in some of these areas that are not professional areas. If they're not happy, that they'll move quickly.
I will say that I'm thankful to get this feedback, and it is a University of Tennessee survey, which does serve us well because we can compare ourselves to our peers across the entire UT system and how they're performing. I am pleased that UT Martin has done really well. We did really well this year. Some of the scores, even from last year, we saw some significant improvement in scores, but certainly there is always room for us to be able to continue. I think doing the pulse surveys are going to help significantly. I do want to just say to this advisory board that every cabinet member has seen these results in great detail. And one of my many goals for 2024 is to continue working on the strategy around employee engagement, and particular staff engagement, and what happens there. This is measuring what happens, for our staff side of the house. And so continuing to look at this and continuing to improve is a high priority for me as we go forward. And so doing those pulse surveys certainly will work. Please know I'll continue to have conversations with cabinet members about their areas, in particular those that showed up, that need some, some improvement. We're continuing to talk about those and continuing to move them forward. And perhaps we can, come back and give you results, updated results when we come back in May and that type of thing on our progress, around this employee engagement topic.
Which Dr. Freeman leads me to ask the question, how do we compare with UT Chattanooga, with UT Southern, with UT Knoxville?
Okay, if I can go, not on the record, you're not putting this out there. Okay. So the scores, I know, yeah, it is live stream, okay.
Randy, how you doing?
I should be careful. Okay, I'll be very careful in my response. UT Martin really has great results,
Okay, good.
in terms of employee engagement. What we know really well is that employees love working here. They love being here. They understand the mission for the university. They understand their value around what they're doing and how their piece of, the pie of what they're doing, how it contributes to the whole for the institution overall. And so we have really, really high scores in
Good.
that area.
Good.
The places we need to work on, Mr. Washington did a really good job, I think, of kind of trying to summarize those. How do we engage, the non-exempt staff more in what happens on campus? How do we increase the scores around women versus men? We saw some discrepancies there. How do we ensure that the younger, employees are just as engaged as those folks who are seasoned? I can say seasoned because I'm seasoned. So, how do we ensure that they are just as engaged as well? But comparatively, I'd rather be at UT Martin than some of the other scores that I've seen. So.
Perfect.
Is that safe enough?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's good information because, again, we can talk about that what we saw was relationships between the departments at UT Martin.
Yeah.
I wanted to see relationships between our, the other universities.
Absolutely.
So that's a great answer. Any other questions? Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
I think next we have Petra again, and Gina's coming up. They're going to talk about the capital projects update on the College of Business and Global Affairs, and probably announce what the start date is for those buildings.
With the big hit.
be it. Can you, next slide, please. I'm just gonna give a little history and background. Why do we need a new business building? The current building that holds business administration was built in 1951 as a dormitory after World War II to help with student enrollment and population. It was named Browning Hall, and it was converted from a dormitory to offices and classrooms in 1975, and then housed the School of Business, excuse me. In 1990, the name was changed from Browning Hall to the Business Administration Building, and it is and continues to be the top priority of the Chancellor, Dean, College of Business and Global Affairs faculty to have this new building, state-of-the-art. We've had great support from the building. We've had financial and moral support from the College of Business and Global Affairs Advisory Board, from faculty and staff, and in 2021, we received from an alumnus a lead gift of up to $4 million that would meet and exceed the state match. So, I'll leave it.
So of course, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of ifs about the College of Business. The UT system has an opportunity to submit 3 capital outlay projects each cycle. And for the UT system, the top 3 that were submitted was a UTK chemistry building at $165 million, a UT Chattanooga Fletcher Hall building, and then the rounding that out is the Health Science Center Gross Anatomy building at $29.7 million. So that cycle has run, and what is selected in the next cycle with the governor's budget, we'll know more about what he wants to fund next month. And from that, we'll determine kind of if there's any domino effect. We're very hopeful that all 3 buildings are done, but in the event that it's not, then that will change the priority for the following year. What we want to do is find out what that is and then kind of get a better idea of where UT Martin is with the College of Business building. One thing that we also have to consider is if we are able and very successful in that, we're certainly advocating for it to be #1 on UT's list. We're doing everything that we can for that to be the case. However, it's really important to know that there are a number of things in play. Of course, the state budget also plays into what support that is given for that. The funding level may shift based on the funding cycle. So as we look forward to UT Martin being successful in the funding cycles, then we'll have a better idea. So with that said, this is just a conceptual rendering of the building, but we have also estimated the cost of the building project. If you all may recall, we started this project at a $50 million building. And because at the time that we conceived of this idea, there have been a lot of construction escalations that have happened in that time. So every cycle that we submit the project, we actually need to build in escalating factors, which are estimates that are given based on other building projects across the state, so that when approved, we're more in line with what we can reasonably build a building. The capital outlay request for, if we're in the next funding cycle for the 2026 cycle, the request from the state would be $57 million with a match of nearly $4 million at $3.6 million, with a total project of $61 million. So again, we started at $50 million, and now we're at $61 million if we're successful in the next project. The escalation for the price of the building varies from year to year, but we do try to factor that in so that we can come in within budget and have a building built. given the timeline, and this is in the 2026 cycle, if we're approved, the timeline for that will essentially get us started with the budget being approved in July of 2025 and the building being completed in 2029. Hopefully with classes open for the fall of 2029. So this is just an idea. If the stars align, if everything works out, this would be a building project to have a new College of Business building for our students. Are there any questions?
Where do you propose to put that building?
Actually, it would replace the existing College of Business building, so we would demolish that building and build back there. Any other questions?
Any questions?
All right,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
The next item is the Title III grant, Center for Teaching and Learning, which Anderson and Eric will be asked to present.
Good afternoon, friends. It's nice to see you again on this side of the podium. I enjoyed my time on the advisory board, and hopefully you'll enjoy this exceedingly brief presentation on our Title III Strengthening Institutions Program Award. Next slide, please. So just as a overview of this Department of Education award that we received, we were notified in September that we'd received this award in which we requested about $1.5 million over 5 years. We've named our project director, Dr. Jamie Mantooth, who would usually make this presentation, but he's otherwise occupied at the moment. We are in the process of hiring a Title III business manager, someone who will work directly with the Department of Education on using and dispersing these funds. We then have 3 committees, the membership of which is shared across some of these 3 committees, but these are our steering committee. So these are the ones who are thinking about what should this grant money be used for and how can we make that happen. The management team in the nitty-gritty of making sure that it does happen. And then our evaluation team are the ones who are looking at what goals have we set for ourselves and have we met those goals and are we meeting them on time and when do we need to shift our goals due to any circumstances that we might run into. All 3 of these committees are required by the Department of Education, and so we've fulfilled those obligations, and those committees the steering committee and management team have met. The evaluation team will meet later once we have something for them to evaluate. Next slide, please. So there are 2 large goals, 2 overarching goals that we want to use this $1.5 million for over the next 5 years. The first is creating a Center for Teaching and Learning. This is an endeavor we've been discussing here on this campus for some time. It's included in our strategic plan as well. And then 2, to create a learning commons to centralize learning support services and expand high-impact practices. A learning commons is one of the newer terms for what we might used to have called a student tutoring center, right? But a learning commons is a place where students from multiple disciplines can come and talk with professionals, often students just like them who are particularly good at these disciplines, help them improve in their courses and coursework. The interesting thing about this Title III grant, Lindy, if you go to the next slide, is that it pairs up almost exactly with the 4 main goals in our quality enhancement plan that we submitted and was approved by SACS COC at the winter meeting. So we are able to, 2 birds, 1 stone sort of thing is what we're going for here, and this extra help, this extra financial assistance from the Department of Education is really going to help us accomplish these goals. Next slide, please. So the Goal 1 progress, which is for the Center for Teaching and Learning, we have named an interim director, and it happens to be me. One of the many titles that I hold. The Center for Teaching and Learning is getting its, getting its feet under itself, figuring out where it's going to be located and what's going to be provided by the center on a yearly basis. In this last fall semester, we provided 3 GENS 101 Lunch and Learns for those instructors to come and talk about best practices in that GENS 101 class. That's our first year experience. We've also been running our new faculty orientation program out of the Center for Teaching and Learning. This used to be a one-day drink from a fire hose. Here's the things we think you need to know about being a faculty member, and we'll see you later. We've developed that now into a year-long cohort-based process where we have special speakers come and talk to the new faculty. In fact, in February, Dr. Kolich and I will be talking with these new faculty about preparing for tenure and promotion, as well as preparing for annual evaluations. The kind of information that faculty need, and they need it very, very quickly, but maybe not all on the same day. We've also been meeting with system colleagues at the other CTLs that exist at the other universities. We've got some really fantastic partners, particularly at Chattanooga and the Health Science Center, that are really helpful and eager to share best practices. We've also established a QEP implementation team, which will be helping with some of these Title III priorities. This implementation team focused on the Center for Teaching and Learning is honing in on a mission statement and values for our Center for Teaching and Learning. What are the bedrock basic things, principles that we want to build its programming and offerings around? And then also developing a leadership structure with hopefully a faculty steering committee, which will grow out of this QEP implementation team, establishing a student advisory committee we feel like is a positive step forward, right? If this is about, the Center for Teaching and Learning is about teaching faculty to be better at their job with students, we should probably have students there to tell us what it is that they need from their faculty. Another exciting idea that we have floating around is that of a faculty fellowship position. We'll talk about the director, the more permanent director, in just a moment, but we're hoping that we can, faculty who, like our 2 award winners, that we can bring them on board with some sort of fellowship program, cover the cost of an adjunct to teach their classes back in their department, but then use about half of their time to help develop the Center for Teaching and Learning further into the future. Next slide, please. One large budget adjustment that we've made within our Title III grant proposal that the Department of Education was very happy to hear about is we had funding for a number of lower positions that we've decided to consolidate into that new director position, right? Not that I don't want to be interim director, but a national search for a professionally trained Center for Teaching and Learning director we think is a great first step, and then allowing that person to help us fill out the rest of the staff in that area. The steering committee and QEP implementation teams are crafting this position description, and we hope to have a national search and hopefully have that approved, ready to go out soon, and have that person named so that they can get to work maybe this summer. Now, Dr. Norberg will talk about our second goal.
Maybe bring the next slide up. I only have 25 more slides, so we'll get through this quickly. No, I just have 2 slides, actually. So where is a lot of this activity going to happen? It's going to happen in our academic library, which has long been a center for learning in various ways over time. Not just books and study, but we do instruction, and students engage with each other and with their faculty in our setting. So this is the natural next step for us. For the library, we provide information literacy instruction to support students exploring the ever-increasing world of information, which becomes quite challenging. But we have had a long tradition of hosting other units in our building. So we have a manifestation of the Writing Center that supports student writing. We've had a long relationship with Student Success in supporting their supplemental instruction program with space, and also with a STEM lab that's located in our building at the moment. Brad Baumgardner, I tip the hat to, has been a very good partner since his arrival in talking about how we might integrate tutoring a little bit better so that students don't see a disconnect in understanding where to get assistance with academic challenge. And so that conversation has developed now into a piece that's now being supported by the Title III funding. And the Learning Commons, as Dr. Starling said, will be physical locations where this kind of learning, instruction, and peer educator contact can occur. Some of that will be a physical manifestation in our building. We will be making improvements to the existing classroom 118. We're going to be completely transforming a library computer classroom that we have into a more flexible learning space. And these will be spaces where faculty can engage with students, students can engage with each other, but they'll also be capable to do distance learning, interactive video conferencing, so that will extend these activities to our regional centers, to students who are studying fully remote with the university in various locations. So last slide, if somebody can advance us. We also then are investing into some spaces on our first floor that will allow for one-to-one interactions. If you come over to the building now, last year we installed 6 of these individual consultation booths, ideally set for one-to-one consultations, although you can cram a few people in there if you really work at it. The Title III grant will allow us to expand this space. And one of the real key parts here that Brad and his team and the rest of us are really excited about is that we want to really expand peer educator contact. It's great when a faculty member can engage a student successfully, but I think we find more and more that the peer educators are the ones that have the most dramatic impact on student learning. And so we'll be able to do some of this work. We're also looking at, through separate funding, some work to possibly bring in an architect to do some work to help us redesign that first floor of the library in and around this concept of the learning commons. So with that, I'll turn things back over.
Thank you.
Yeah, any questions? Yes.
For the faculty orientation, is that, you said it was a year long?
Yes, sir.
You thought about maybe extending it more to get them ready for pre-tenure review for those?
We have, in fact, and after this first year of the program, we want to continue to, so I have the cohort in a Canvas course, right, in our learning management system, and that is a way for us to continue to communicate with that cohort as they move through their career at UT Martin, and then also invite them back each year if they want to attend these same training sessions in case things are updated or they need to refresh themselves. Yes, absolutely.
Any other questions?
I will just say thank you to the 3 gentlemen who have been working on this and the entire committee who's been doing it. It really is transformational when you think about what the Center for Teaching and Learning can do with faculty helping faculty, and also what the Learning Commons will do for students helping students, right? And so certainly can be a game changer around success for this campus and transformation for this campus. So thank you for the work.
I would agree. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Now we'll invite Ashley Bynum up to talk about the athletics update.
Hey, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to get to speak with you all today. So I have been tasked with providing an update for athletics. So my agenda will be fairly brief, but NCAA updates encompasses a lot of information. So I'm going to try to hit the most important items that have had the biggest impact, not only nationally, but also here locally at UT Martin. So we'll talk through some of those things. And specifically in regard to that, the transfer portal in Windows and the impact that that's had on our athletic programs here on campus. So to start, like I said, just a few academic highlights. So up at the top there, this is our departmental GPAs over the past few semesters. So fall 18 through fall 23, we have listed what our departmental GPA has been. We went through some restructuring around the fall 19 semester, added some personnel to our academic staff, and completely restructured what our policies, procedures, and methods are for student-athlete academic support. As you can see, we had a significant increase in our GPA as a result of that restructure and our ability to think outside of the box with how we would handle academic support for student-athletes. So our goal has been to maintain a 3.2 GPA, which we've been able to achieve since the fall 2019 semester. So we've been very proud of that, and that is due to not only the work we're doing within side athletics, but also all of the additional resources, support, and collaboration from the faculty and staff across campus. So we appreciate all of that collaboration, all of that support, and, you know, understanding the size of our staff, we have to rely heavily on faculty and staff to assist us. And so I definitely want to mention those folks for their assistance in helping us not only reach but maintain our goals. So like I said, 3.2 is what we strive for, and we've managed to make that happen over the past couple semesters. Next slide, Lindy. Okay, this is our graduation success rate report. And we're looking at 2012, 2013 cohort through the 2016, 2017 cohort. So the 2012, 2013 group would have graduated 2017, 2018, and forward. So the blue bar is our UTM athletics graduation success rate. The orange bar is the UT Martin student body success rate, and then the gray bar is the NCAA national average. So our goal here is to either meet or exceed the NCAA national average. The University of Tennessee at Martin makes it really difficult on us because as an institution we have a pretty good graduation success rate. And so typically what we try to do is mirror ourselves based off of, or grade ourselves based on how we're doing compared to other athletic departments. So as you can see, our blue line has seen some increases since that 17-18 graduation year. There's been a couple dips over time. I think when I start to talk about the transfer portal, you'll understand why those dips have come in. The graduation success rate looks at how many incoming freshmen we have and if they graduate from UT Martin. So if we have a student athlete that chooses to transfer away from UT Martin and graduate from another institution, we're docked for that student because they didn't graduate from our institution. And so I think some of those dips there around the inception of the transfer portal, like I said, we'll talk about in just a minute, could probably explain why we saw a bit of a dip there. But we're back up. We had our one of our best years in the 21-22 academic year, which is the most recent published data, at 65%. So that's where we stand. And again, that is in regard to incoming freshmen and graduating from UT Martin from our institution. Next slide, Lindy. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some NCAA legislative updates. And like I said, this is a ton of information. So I'm gonna talk about two things that I think have been very relevant for right now for UT Martin and nationally. First being name, image, likeness. So if you pay attention to sports, you've probably heard something about name, image, likeness recently in the past few years. And it just refers to the ability of a student athlete to profit off of their name, image, and likeness with brand deals and any other external sources. So this was born out of a legislative action in certain states, and then other states started to follow. And then from there, the NCAA decided, okay, if the states are beginning to legislate in this area, then we're going to have to get up to speed. So the NCAA did put in place that it was permissible to garner deals for your name, image, and likeness as a student athlete. Right now, institutional involvement is minimal, meaning our coaches can't act as agents and go out and garner deals for our student athletes. It has to be student athlete driven. That has changed 3 times already. It has changed within the state of Tennessee to be in conflict of what the NCAA states. So there's a lot of fluctuation there and a lot of unknowns about, you know, who are we answering to? Are we answering to the NCAA? Are we answering to the state of Tennessee? Do we have to do a culmination of both? What does that look like? And then another thing to note is that this significantly changes the recruiting landscape for our coaches. We are seeing a dip in our incoming freshmen, and I think partially because of name, image, likeness. You know, coaches are limited in the number of scholarships that they can provide to student athletes, and so I think what we're seeing here is a student athlete that would have the ability to come to UT Martin and play football on a full scholarship and probably be a star here might decide to take an opportunity at a Power 5 school where they could be a walk-on, still receive a full ride through name, image, likeness deals, and maybe a F-150 if they go to Utah, and get the benefits of being a student athlete at a Power 5 institution, garner the name, image, likeness deals, get their school paid for, participate in bowl games, you know, do things like that they don't have necessarily the opportunity to do here at our institution and at other institutions at our size. And so that it's definitely changing the way that we must recruit, and we'll look at some of those numbers in just a bit, but we're shying away from the incoming freshmen in some sports because of that, because they're choosing to go to Power 5 institutions and use that name, image, likeness money. I think the University, or Miami was one of the first universities that said all walk-ons will have NIL deals that will pay for their tuition. And so that's what you're seeing at these Power 5 institutions, and something that we're just not really in a position to do based on the size of our institution, our alumni base, those things like that. And so it's definitely changed what it looks like for us as far as recruiting goes. Another thing that's had a significant impact on the recruiting legislation, or our recruiting landscape, is the scholarship requirements for four-year transfers. So starting with fall of '23, any four-year undergraduate transfers are now on a multi-year aid agreement until either the expiration of their eligibility or until they have been in school for their entire five-year clock per the NCAA. So the prior rule was we would be able to renew scholarships on a yearly basis each summer at the coach's discretion. Now, if you bring in a four-year undergraduate transfer, that scholarship is locked in until they either achieve graduation or their eligibility expires. And so when you're bringing in a four-year undergraduate transfer, there's a little bit more of a commitment there to that student and a little more of a risk because there's no grounds for cancellation except leaving the institution and enrolling at another institution. So a student athlete could come to UT Martin, decide, the team's not a good fit for them, but they want to continue in school here, finish their degree, those things. At that point, we would have to continue to keep their scholarship at the same rate, despite the fact that they're not participating in athletics, until they finish their degree or depart the institution. So again, there's some higher stakes there when you're bringing in the four-year undergraduate transfers than what we've seen in the past. Honestly, I think this was born out of the NCAA kind of opening up transfers through the transfer portal. And so they're trying to reduce the number of four-year transfers in some way and increase the institutional obligation to those four-year transfers. And so we've got this legislation in place now. And so that's something we're working through and figuring out and having to talk through as we recruit and bring students on campus. Next slide, Lindy. Okay, so now the fun stuff. We're going to look at the transfer numbers. You can go ahead and hit the next slide. So the first thing that we need to do to make sure we can understand this properly is talk about what I'm talking about. So what's the transfer portal? The transfer portal is the new method of a student athlete notifying the athletic department, their coaches, and all coaches across the nation that they have an intention of transferring to a new institution. This was established in 2018. Prior to that, it was a permission to contact model, meaning that the student had to go to the coach and request permission for other institutions to contact them. This really put a lot of the power in the coach's hands, and with the transfer portal, that power has now shifted to the student athlete's hands, to where they have more of an opportunity to dictate where they are and where they play and how long they play there. And so, like I said, that was established in 2018, and then in 2022, we saw the establishment of transfer portal windows. Okay, so prior to 2022, a student athlete could go into the transfer portal at any time. This created some instability with rosters. Coaches were not able to maintain, who's locked in, who's with us, who's in the transfer portal looking for a new spot. And so in order to create some stability in our rosters, the NCAA implemented the windows, which dictates specific periods of time during the academic year that students can enter into the transfer portal. And so typically what that means is a student athlete could enter the transfer portal for 30 days at the end of their championship season, and then for 15 days at the end of the semester that does not contain their championship season. So for football, for instance, once the championship season's over, there's a 30-day window for them to enter the portal. And then there's another 15-day window at the end of the spring term for them to enter the portal. In order for a student athlete to transfer and be immediately eligible at their next institution, they would have to enter the transfer portal during one of those permissible windows. Okay, so that instead of us having 12 months to go into the portal, we now have about 2.5 months that they can go into the portal. So coaches know not only who's departing, but they also know when to look into the transfer portal for recruits from other institutions, because in order for them to be immediately eligible, they must go in during those windows. Okay, you can take me to the next one. Okay, so we'll look at some numbers for the transfer portal. So this is our national transfer portal numbers. How many student athletes went into the transfer portal year by year since its inception? So 18-19, there was about 11,000 student athletes that utilized the transfer portal. And then down to 2023, or 22-23 is the year that we have the most complete set of data. Obviously, we're in the middle of 23-24, and so this is just our number, national number from the fall term. More student athletes go in at the end of the spring than they do the end of the fall, so we anticipate that number to exceed the 23,000 from the 22-23 academic year. So a total of 96,000 student athletes have used the transfer portal to depart their institutions since the transfer portal's inception. Next slide, please. No, go back. Sorry. Okay, UTM transfer portal numbers. Okay, so we looked at the national numbers, right? So this is our numbers for UT Martin specifically. 18-19, we had 32 student athletes enter the transfer portal to depart our institution. Okay, so these are students that are leaving UT Martin to go to other institutions. 19-20, it was 28. 2021, you see it jump up to almost 70 student athletes. And since 2021, we have maintained around that 60-70 number every academic year. So we carry anywhere from 430 to 480 student athletes departmentally every year. And so I'm not a mathematician, Art, I'll leave that to you, but that's a decent percentage of our student athlete population using the transfer portal each and every year. So like I said, we anticipate the 23-24 number to either reach or exceed the 22-23 number just based on trends and when students tend to enter the portal. So it's a total of 277 student athletes since the inception of the transfer portal utilizing that process to depart UT Martin. Next slide. Okay, this one's a lot of information, so I'm gonna talk through it with you, and not all of it, but enough for you to kind of get a gist of what I'm trying to explain here, and then let you digest some of the information yourself. So up at the very top, we've got the year listed, we've got the transfer types, and then we've got the total number of transfers, and then we've got it broken down by sport. So this is incoming transfers, student athletes that we've brought to UT Martin to participate with our athletic programs. The 4-year transfers refers to any transfers from a 4-year institution. 2-year transfers refers to anybody coming from a junior college. So just a side-by-side comparison of the number of those transfers per academic year, and then the total up at the top. So I'm not going to go through sport by sport. You guys can look at that if you please. But what I want to highlight is the total. So the first year, 17-18, that we were able to get the data on, it was about even as far as 4-year versus 2-year transfers, but a total of 40 transfers during that year. As you can see, as time went on, 18-19, we were still sticking heavily with the 2-year transfers. And then 19-20, it was about even again. And then once you hit 20-21 academic year, we really see an uptick in the 4-year transfers and a decrease in the 2-year transfers. Baseball lives in the JUCO world, so we are always going to see a high number of 2-year transfers with the sport of baseball. But I think what we can see here from these numbers is that pretty much across the board for our sports, we've seen an uptick in 4-year transfers to our institution since the inception of the transfer portal and some of the changes in the transfer legislation that have come along with the transfer portal. The 2-year transfers are they're staying pretty steady with the 20 to 25 range. But again, my main goal is to highlight we are bringing in more transfers now than we ever have before. And we're also leaning more heavily on the 4-year transfers than we are the 2-year transfers. During the 23-24 year, we do have a complete set of data for that since we're already in the spring term. We know how many transfers we brought in during the fall and spring terms for the 23-24 academic year. So these numbers are accurate for our incoming fall students and our incoming spring students. Sorry, Destin, as you know, we had a bunch of incoming spring students this semester. But we had 63 total 4-year transfers come in for this academic year, and then 25 2-year transfers come in during this academic year. So our data started with about 40 transfer students total, and then we are looking at closer to 90 students for this academic year as far as transfers go coming into the institution to compete in athletics here at UT Martin. Again, with a heavier emphasis on 4-year transfers than 2-year transfers, I think obviously due to the inception of the transfer portal and some of the changes in legislation that came along with that. So that is what I have for you guys, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have about this data, the regulations I mentioned, or anything maybe you've heard outside of this presentation that you have questions about that I will try my best on.
Ashley, you said 430, 450 athletes, student athletes we have. How does that compare to 5 years ago, 10 years ago? And that may be a Kirk question. But.
Sure. No, well, I think we've grown by over 100 student athletes. I think when Kurt and I both started in 2017, we
330 athletes in 2017.
Yeah, 330.
Our high was 481, I think. We've hovered around 450 to 460 a lot of years.
And I'm probably wrong on this, but I have to believe that a lot of those increases are not necessarily full scholarship people.
That's correct. We only have men's and women's basketball and volleyball at this point that are head count sports, which means they're required to have a full scholarship. Everyone else is based on an equivalency, so they can get a percentage scholarship. We don't have to provide a full. Now, there are still, like football, not most, I would say probably 60% of theirs are full scholarships. But everyone else can offer partial scholarships besides those 3 sports. And so the vast majority of our student athletes are not on a full scholarship.
Which a partial scholarship on a soccer means that they're paying their own way or have an academic.
That's correct. That's correct.
Any idea how much money that 150 has brought in since 2017 to the university?
For my last spreadsheet I've done in front of this board and cabinet, we're up about 2.1 million outside dollars. That doesn't mean all, it's Pell, it's mom and dad, it's all anything. That's mostly the walk-ons and the partial kids since we've increased the amount of kids on our rosters.
Which I assume Petra puts all that in the athletic budget. I had to get that in there for you, Petra. When, when a student decides he wants to come to UT Martin, are we losing any students, not from an athletic standpoint, but from an academic standpoint, or lack of transfers of credits and stuff like that? What happens there?
Yeah, so we don't lose many incoming freshmen based on academics. We've got a wide variety of course offerings and program offerings and things like that, and our faculty are great about working with our student athletes to make sure that we can provide what it is that they're interested in. The transfer situation is a little more difficult, especially when we're talking about the 2-year transfers coming from a junior college and those courses. We have policies and procedures in place as an institution to bring that transfer work in and for them to get credit for it, and for us to keep them on track for their degree as best as possible. I think there's always room for improvement in some of those processes. Some of the transfer equivalencies can be a little bit subjective sometimes, but outside of transfer coursework coming in and the way that we indicate what that coursework will substitute as, we tend to do a pretty good job. And most of the coursework we can fit into a degree program in a way that will get them graduated, but it is a multi-semester process. And so when you have a student athlete coming in with 1, 2, or even maybe only 3 semesters left, it can be a bit of a time crunch to get all of that paperwork done in a way to get them to still graduate on time while completing their athletic eligibility.
Do most of them, when they come in and say they're in education or they're in business or something, do they stay in business when they get there, or are there any challenges there?
Yeah, we typically aren't able to start a student athlete in the degree program that they want to graduate with. We will use the interdisciplinary studies degree to make sure that they're still meeting their progress towards degree and taking the coursework that they want. But without doing that administrative process of having the coursework evaluated and plugged into their flight plan where it belongs, we can't get them directly into their degree program. So most student athletes spend a couple of semesters in the interdisciplinary studies program until we're able to get that administrative paperwork taken care of and get them into their chosen degree field.
Does that cause a student to have to go to UT Martin longer?
Yeah, I mean, yes. It is very rare that a student doesn't have to stay at least one semester longer than what they intended if they choose to transfer.
On the outside looking in, that can't just be a student athletic problem. That's got to be a problem with anybody trying to transfer in. And I know I had Jamie pull some of our old minutes, and I know back in 2020 there was a program set up through the UT system on transfer initiative, which there was a guy from UT Chattanooga on there by the name of Yancey Freeman that was on that that committee. Whatever happened to that? Because the best of my recollection, we were even having trouble getting people to come to UT Martin and transfer those credits from Chattanooga or Knoxville.
So the goal with that committee, I did sit on that committee, and the goal for that committee was to talk about seamless transfer of students. And as we thought about the two-year institutions, the difficulty of transferring some of that coursework in from two-year institutions, in particular with transfer equivalency agreements that are there, articulation agreements that are there, and getting them to the four-year institutions across the state is incredibly difficult. And so we sort of back down the ambition just a little bit to talk about how do we get students who want to transfer between UT institutions, how do we ensure that that process can be seamless? In the midst of the conversation around that committee, we talked about having departments meet and talk about transferability of courses. So you have a Tennessee history course that's a 2000 level course, and it's being taught at Chattanooga at the 2000 level and Martin at the 3000 level. Does that course transfer seamlessly across? We found that there were some issues that were there. And so it really does take some discussion, some conversation between the academic departments around cleaning that articulation process up, and so that it comes very seamlessly. By chance, we're getting ready to work on, for those of you who do not know, a new uniform student information system, which means we're going to have to start. I see Destin and Brad and the rest of the team behind me. It means we're going to have to work through that process again of course articulation, putting all of that stuff into the system. It's probably going to be a great time for us to revisit some of that transferability of courses, how easily and seamlessly that process works across the UT system. There is always going to be work to be done because we're always developing new programs, new courses, new disciplines, concentrations of programs, and so there's always going to be work done, and so it is an incredibly daunting task. I felt like some progress happened when we met, but it's been 2020 since we had that discussion, and so it may be time for us to render it again, talk about it some more, and I'm going to take a note to put that on the list of things that I need to do. Without
getting any information on any department, any school, any person, are there some departments that it's easier to move through than other departments as far as getting the credits? And if so, why are we inconsistent?
Yeah, no, absolutely, yes, is the answer to your question.
Okay.
What about the second part?
Well, I'll give you an example. And Mary Beth Fortner, if you're watching this, I'm sorry for all of the course evaluation forms that I submit to you incessantly. But we had a transfer student athlete come in this spring from the University of Kentucky, and he was a communications major. And I have a pile on my desk of syllabi for him that's about this thick. I submitted 30 syllabi for review by the different academic departments to see if he would get credit for those here at UT Martin. And whether or not there are direct equivalencies for those courses at the University of Tennessee at Martin. So to your point about the regular student, that specific student has me to bring those syllabi to, where I can sit down and input that information, send it to Mary Beth, and she can start the process of notifying the academic departments to get that information taken care of. If you're not a student athlete, my question is, where do you go to get those syllabi evaluated? Who do you take them to start the process?
That's a fair point and one that concerns me a whole lot. Because again, you're talking about student athletes and I'm talking about students.
Correct.
And the student athlete has the advocate, that's you. But if I'm trying to get it done, I don't necessarily have that advocate
Right.
for me.
Not as easily accessible, for sure.
I got another question for you.
Yes.
You made the statement that if a person transfers out,
Mhm.
it hurts your trends.
Mhm.
What if that person transfers in and graduates from UT Martin?
We do not get credit for that on the graduation success rate.
That
That's-
seems extremely fair. In other words, you
Yeah.
get penalized, but if you lose one, you get penalized. If you get two in and graduate them, you don't get any credit.
Well, I will say the NCAA also has the academic progress rate, which is another program that grades us on how well we graduate student athletes. And that does encompass all those students that transfer in. And so
Okay.
we will get credit for them on that report. And additionally, we don't get docked for students that transfer out and immediately enroll at another four-year institution as long as they're meeting certain GPA requirements.
Okay.
And so it's a little more friendly to the transfer landscape that we're in right now. And honestly, we tend to do better on APR than we do graduation success rate because the student athletes that we do transfer in, we graduate most of the time.
The APR is where we've lost some scholarships in the past.
That's
Several
correct.
years ago.
Correct,
You
yes.
get penalized.
Before me. And Kurt.
Huh?
And before me and Kurt.
Oh, okay. I started at the University of Tennessee, and I get redshirted, and I transfer to UT Martin. And I walk in on my second day and say, I no longer like to play football. By the way, you owe me 4 years' worth of education. What if I get disgruntled at UT Martin and I transfer to XYZ? Do they have to pick that up?
No. It is only the institution that initially offered and provided the aid.
Okay.
Now, if the new institution offers the aid, then yes, but it is only for the institution that offers the aid.
My idea of transfer portals and NIL has just made the rich richer and the poor poorer when it's all said and done. And to me, the big losers are our high school kids.
Yes.
Unless they're a five-star, because why is Jason Simpson gonna go sign somebody from Jackson? Because he's gonna wait and see who's in the portal.
And I think that's twofold, Laura. I think one, we've asked our coaches, we still want our coaches, don't give up on freshmen, but as you see the trend that's there, especially certain sports, to a smaller budgeted athletic department that doesn't have the resources to send coaches out constantly to evaluate high school kids. It's easier to watch a kid film off college games and get college coaches' input on what that kid's going to be. And obviously, an 18-year-old body compared to a 21 or 22-year-old body and have experience, it's there. I think the biggest alarming thing is those four-year transfers. I think, Ash, I don't think you said it. Let's say basketball gets 13 full ride scholarships because it's a full scholarship. If he brings in a four-year transfer that doesn't want to play anymore, that counts towards those 13. So if he brings two of those and they decide not to play, but they're still in school, we're down to 11. And those kids, so that's the trend that scares me the most. That some of those kids not want to play and we're still on the hook for their education.
Which was gonna be one of my questions. So they do account against you even though they're not participating?
Yes.
It seems like the NCAA's been changing this stuff about every 2 weeks. How do y'all keep up with it?
Well, the conference office, the Ohio Valley Conference, they have a compliance staff that's really good about helping push that information out. I'm on listservs with the NCAA. I'm on listservs with different outside educational groups. It's just a constant stream of information that we have to try to keep a handle on. And it really all started with COVID. They started changing things week to week when COVID was implemented, or when there were restrictions based on COVID implemented. They've now changed their legislative cycle to 3 legislative votes a year, October, January, and April. And so there's a little more structure and consistency with the legislative vote now. that allows us to have a better handle on when the information's coming out and when to anticipate changes.
Okay? If I transfer from UT Martin because somebody's gonna give me $100,000 NIL, and I get to that university and I don't like where I am, one, what happens to the NIL? Is it my money? And number two, can I transfer back to UT Martin without being penalized? Because I think you can transfer one time and there's no penalty, but the second.
Right.
Okay, what happens there?
So to start with your NIL question, that's been a big question throughout time, and there was a quarterback at I think maybe Texas that got this huge NIL deal and ended up being benched for someone else, and the NIL deal had to be honored because that was a private contract between the person providing the NIL deal and the student athlete that cannot be tied to athletic participation. That is a part of the regulations. You can't cancel the scholarship or cancel the contract because they're not performing well. And so that is a huge question and a huge concern for those providing NIL dollars, especially if you're trying to make something like that work at a school like UT Martin as opposed to a larger institution that has virtually endless funds in their NIL collectives or whatever. So, and then for your second question, you can transfer one time from one four-year institution to the next and be immediately eligible. And then after that, well, let me say this. It used to be after that you were no longer eligible to your next institution. Just because you're returning back to your previous institution doesn't mean that you'd be eligible to compete. You'd still have to serve that year in residence. Now, over Christmas break, there was a federal court that issued a temporary injunction that said that the NCAA could not prevent student athletes from participating in athletics if they had transferred more than once. Okay, so the 4-4-4 transfers would be eligible to compete since that injunction came out. And it was supposed to be a 2-week injunction. The NCAA joined the injunction and said, we'll continue this through the end of the spring 24 semester, and then we'll revisit. So right now, we have no idea what fall and spring of 24-25 looks like, because the directive we've been given is anyone that enrolled for spring 24 would be eligible even if they transferred more than once. So if they came in spring 24 for a fall 24 championship season, they'd still be eligible then. But we don't know what's going to happen to any students that enroll after the spring 24 semester ends. So we actually had a basketball student athlete that was serving a year in residence that's now eligible to compete because of this temporary injunction that's in place against the NCAA.
And this will count as a year of eligibility?
Yes, that's correct. He'll be charged with the season of competition just as if he played the full season, yeah.
Any other questions? I appreciate your comments on the struggles with transferring in, especially, and I hadn't thought about it, you being the advocate for the student athletes, but the regular student not having an advocate. And I don't know how we compare with students coming in, whether we have a lot or a few. I see the report every week.
The next set of folks coming up will be able to kind of help with addressing some of that,
Okay.
I think. It is, I think the wonderful thing about Ashley and athletics is that a lot of the support is very centralized. And so a lot of what they can provide in a centralized way helps student athletes to be able to know kind of where to go. Someone who is not a student athlete, you're right, there are always challenges with helping them to identify where those resources are. So we're asking a lot of questions, and some of the questions that I'm asking, I know the answer to those questions, and others I don't, and we're exploring. But I think the next couple of folks who are coming up to present to the committee will be able to talk some about what that process looks like and how students navigate and find their way.
Okay. Any questions of Ashley? Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
We'll ask Brad and Justin to come up and continue our discussion.
Hello, I'm Destin Tucker, Director of Undergraduate Admissions, and so I work primarily with our undergraduate students, new first-year students, transfer students, as well as serve as the chair of our Strategic Enrollment Management Council. We were asked to talk about enrollment goals and where we see ourselves for fall of 2024. And so our overall enrollment goal for fall of 2024 is 7,105 students, which represents a 2.2% increase. It would put us over that 7,000 student mark, which we've been below for the past couple of years. And we have a lot of processes, initiatives in place where we are confident that's where we'll be, at least for fall of 24. Behind that, of course, are a lot of small goals, small tracking, things that you're going to hear about from Brad and me today. The first year student goal is 1,157 students, which is a 4% increase. I'm going to talk in just a minute about the tracking that we're seeing with those students and some new initiatives that we have there. First year transfer students, we are anticipating an increase there, in large part due to some scholarship increases that we were able to implement this year. We have seen, to answer your question from a few minutes ago about transfer students, we've seen several years of decline in new transfer students. Our community college partners have seen large declines, and so that's a big part of it. For fall of 23, the community colleges that we mostly get feeders from are Dyersburg State and Jackson State, just given their proximity to UT Martin. And they were down on average about 10% in their enrollment. And so we were down about 7% in transfer students. And so we feel like we did better than their decline in enrollment, but we are still seeing some declines. But we feel like that can, transfer students want scholarship money just like first year students do. I think for a long time, the research told us that transfer students didn't need scholarships because they're kind of in a place where they have to transfer, they have to, if they're finished with their community college, they have to move on. But that's just not the case anymore. They're getting, Tennessee Promise, the free 2 years, they're not used to paying anything. And so now that we are able to offer a little bit more and some scholarship opportunities for transfer students, we think that's going to make a big difference. And then first-time graduate students, Dr. Joey Melhorn is the dean of our graduate enrollment, and he said they're going to be up 8.6% and have 190 first-time graduate students for fall of 24. So thinking about our new students, I know, Mr. Sparks, you see my reports every week, sometimes you ask questions about them, but we look at a lot of different measures to see, gosh, where are we going to be this fall? And so some of those, we just look at our applicants and accepted students. And so our accepted students right now are trending a lot higher than last year. So what I've been doing is comparing that to a 3-year average. There's been a lot of ebb and flow with requirements and processes the past few years with COVID. We took away the ACT requirement for a couple of years. We brought it back full force last year as a result of our UT Board of Trustees, telling us that's what we're going to do as a system. And so we were down significantly in applications and admits last year. Now, we still ended up with a slight increase in our first-year students, but those numbers were low. So what I've been doing is comparing it to a 3-year average, because I do feel like last year was a pretty low number to just do that 1-year comparison. So we are up 2.5% over that 3-year average in accepted students. We ask students what their plans are. We start doing that in December every year for the next fall. It's a non-binding survey. You may hear some institutions talk about enrollment deposits and things that are very firm. Ours is not a firm binding requirement, but it is a good gauge in where students are in their decision-making strategy. So we ask them, are they coming? Are they not sure? Are they not coming? And so we have, I think I started doing this survey in 2017. So we have a lot of data to show that, kind of the yield on that data. Typically about 78% of the students who tell us they're coming on this survey end up being here on census day. And so it's a pretty good indicator. And so we are way up though in that right now over that 3-year average. We're up about 18.6% on those survey responses. We also look at first-year housing deposits. That's always been a big indicator. I think it is at every higher education institution of where we're going to be as far as enrollment goals, and we're up there too. We have 624 first-year housing deposits right now. That means they fill out the application and they pay the housing deposit. So feel like they're pretty committed at that point. That's a 28% increase. Part of that is, I think, just tied to this higher number of accepted students, higher number of intent to enroll students. Also, though, I know that you all know we had our first housing wait list last summer in a long time. So part of it could also be just, panic, am I going to have a place to live on campus? And so, while we are certainly excited about that number, we don't know that that's a true 28% increase as we go throughout the year. We did implement, as I mentioned with transfer students, scholarship increases for fall 24. When Chancellor Freeman got here, I think in his first 2 or 3 weeks, he said, "What are your challenges?" And the first thing I said was scholarships. Our top academic scholarship is our Chancellor Scholarship, and it has been $3,000 for as long as anyone can remember. I found an old catalog from the early 2000s, which the scholarship was still that same amount. I believe it's been that amount since tuition was about $3,000 for the full year. And now tuition is a little over $10,000 for the full year for our in-state students. And so we just really had a lot of room in attracting those top-level scholarship students that we feel like we were missing out on. Now, the Hope Lottery Scholarship has, of course, since come about, and that is a $4,500 scholarship for our Tennessee residents who qualify. So that was offsetting some of that, but still comparatively to our peers and our competitors, we were far behind. So Dr. Freeman, we worked with him and with Petra and with Ruffalo Levitz to identify a new scholarship model starting in fall 2024 for our new students. So we were able to increase the top 2 scholarship levels by $1,000. So we still have a ways to go to get to where our competitors are, but our Chancellor Scholarship starting for new students this fall will be $4,000, and our Dean Scholarship will be $3,000. So those are those really top-tier students that are going to retain, graduate, and be successful at UT Martin. So we feel like these intent to enroll surveys, we think that some of that is definitely tied to those scholarship increases. One thing that we are very nervous about are the FAFSA changes. I believe you've heard in this group how the free application for federal student aid application changed this year, and as a result of that, opened almost 3 months later than it normally does. Usually it opens October 1st of students' senior year, and we're able to send out financial aid packages in January, late December, early January, and start having that conversation about paying for college. Now students were able to fill out the FAFSA starting January 1st, sort of. Some of them, it would crash. There's been a lot of issues if you've watched the news about that at all. But students who were able to fill it out say it's easier, but we don't have that information yet from FAFSA to be able to talk about students' cost. So students are committing to us, which we're thrilled about, at really high rates, but they don't know how much we cost. So those are just things that we are very aware of. We're ready to have those conversations. Financial aid's telling us that those packages will be available in late March, probably. And so that's just a lot later to have that conversation and for students and parents to understand what it's going to cost for them to attend UT Martin. We're continuing to work with our strategic enrollment plan, our marketing efforts there. I know we talked about that with this group before as well, and those things are still working. We feel like those things are going to help us get to our overall goal of 7,105 students. Brad?
Good afternoon. I'll do my best to be brief also. Before we start to dig into some of the persistence and retention data, I'd like to go over just exactly how we measure this and how we use it again. So when we're talking about persistence data, we're talking about fall to spring measurements of students who have stayed at the university and or graduated. This is also very useful for us in a forward-looking way because there are strong correlations between persistence and retention. Of course, retention looks a little bit more at a backwards-looking view, but that's a fall-to-fall measure of students who are continuously enrolled or graduated. So short answer is the numbers are good. We're doing a good job. We're showing a lot of growth. We've been showing some steady persistence and retention over time. As you can see here, the most recent year-to-year numbers that we have, of course, are going to be from the 2022 cohort that we just gathered in fall of 23. But we're showing steady increases in both persistence and retention. Fall to spring persistence there is indicated in blue. Fall to fall retention is indicated in orange. And these are the overall numbers. So this is all undergraduate students. As we start to look at our first-time full-time numbers, so brand new freshmen with not categorized as transfer students, we start to see some really dramatic increases. So we had a low point in the fall of the retention metrics associated with our 2020 cohort for obvious reasons. There was pandemic learning loss. There was a lot of uncertainty, I think, around higher education at the time. But in the last 2 years, our first-time full-time freshman retention has grown by over 3.39%, which we're just thrilled about. It's approaching some of the higher levels that we've seen in the past. And as you can see, a lot of times these correlations between persistence and retention are fairly close. Oops. We're really doing a great job with our students who meet minimum guaranteed admission standards. So in that category, we're showing a 5-year high going back even pre-pandemic. So for those students, we're currently at 76.65 first-time retention year to year. And last year's persistence number with those students was 90.71%. So again, we're seeing some really strong correlations there. And the best news is we're on target to do it again. So these numbers were drawn right before our administrative drop early last week. And they show our persistence totals for students within different cohorts persisting from fall 23 to spring 24. And as you can see, we're up considerably in every single metric. Now, I want to take a moment to issue a very special thanks to our bursar's office, our financial aid office, and our records office, because even after our administrative drop, and being out for a week when we usually would have tried to mitigate some of these drops, these folks worked tirelessly along with student success to admit and get re-enrolled as many students as we possibly could. So even though these numbers may fall off ever so slightly, I still anticipate that our first-year freshman persistence will be over 91% by the time all of the census reporting is done. And that's significant. We haven't been able to do that in quite a while. And because those persistence totals tie closely to those retention totals, we're well positioned to have a strong retention year again next year. So looking at all of those past trends, the idea is that overall retention typically lags about 8 to 9 points behind overall persistence. And the fact that we're also graduating students a little bit more efficiently than we have in the past. Factoring in all of these measures, we're projecting that we probably will see between 2,925 to 3,000 returning UG degree-seeking, undergraduate degree-seeking students. So this is some strong growth. We, of course, want to see those numbers continue to grow. We're well positioned to do so. And again, I want to thank my colleagues for all the support that we've had in these endeavors. This doesn't happen by accident, and it takes a whole campus. I promised I would be brief, and I was. And there was a slide on there, I think, that's supposed to say questions, but it doesn't say that. Okay.
Keep going to that. There you go, it's that one.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Any questions that we might be able to answer?
Any questions for either one of them? Challenges that we could help you with? Don't say money.
The thought crossed my mind.
I will say that Tennessee Higher Education Commission, you asked about transfer students. There's a lot of initiatives right now within the state. There's a push for us to have a common course numbering system statewide. For example, our courses at UTM are 3 numbers. Most of the institutions are 4 numbers. Just things that would make transferability of courses easier for students to understand, and even easier maybe for us at the university level to understand. So I think there's a lot of initiatives to help transfer students. I think that was a population we all thought would just blow up with Tennessee Promise, but we have continued to see declines in community college enrollment and in those transfer students. So hopefully us all working together can help that.
One of the challenges that we've identified, and I didn't show it with a whole lot of granularity here because we don't have the census reporting from the spring yet, is trying to identify institutional performance gaps with our ability to help or assist specific groups of students. So we look at that data very, very closely. And some of those analyses are what directly inform the QEP approach and the Title III grant so that we can continue to offer support to the students in areas where that's needed. So I'm very thankful that our institution, our administration is supportive of those efforts and that we've put them forward in the strategic planning, because that's critical to be able to help these students who might come in with a little less preparation than those maybe who went to a high school with a little more funding or a little more opportunity, to be able to help them to succeed at the institution as well. So it's a challenge, but I think that we do have some plans in place to address that, and I'm very thankful that that's a part of the strategic planning.
Arnett, comment.
Yes, sir.
Last night I had an opportunity to attend a function in Jackson. I guess I call it a recruiting.
It was,
I don't know
yes.
what their name was for it, but anyway, I was impressed. We hear all the time about recruiting athletes and all that goes on, but I didn't realize myself that we recruit students like this group did last night. My kudos to the staff. Each college and the university was represented at a table and had a staff table to answer questions. We had the housing was there, financial aid was there, a large crowd. I think we had about 200. Is that
We did. We didn't have any empty seats, did we?
there were no empty chairs. They gave away 5 or 6 or 7 scholarships, $500 to $1,000 scholarships, and I was impressed. I think the staff and the colleges were. I know in the College of Ag there were 4 professors there. That impressed me that those 4 people had enough interest in recruiting their students to spend the night going to Jackson. I can't speak for other colleges, but those in particular. So I just thank y'all for doing that. I thought it was a it was a very open learning experience to me, and I think the younger people that were there really enjoyed it, and it's got the benefit of our college. Our chancellor was there shaking hands with everybody and welcomed them and told them what a great school we had. So I just want to make those comments. I wish everybody would take the opportunity to make one. I think they're doing 5 across the state.
We are.
Good.
So if you get a chance, go. They had great food too. Don't think they had great. But
they didn't entice you to re-enter UT Martin?
well, I tried to, but I didn't win a scholarship. So I can't go.
So if you got a $500 scholarship, you would come back?
I'd almost come back free, Hartley, just let me.
That's good. And I wasn't aware that they had one in Jackson. It might not be a bad idea to put it out to us, because I wouldn't mind going to some of them, because I think the more.
There's one in Martin's next week.
Monday night, yes.
The more people that the students see that we're actually concerned for the students, the better it is.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do that for sure.
Thank you all. The next item is revision and approval of meeting schedule 24-25. I did not realize last May, when I complained, that we had our meeting on Friday before Memorial Day, which did not work out well for me, that it was going to take an act of Congress to simply move it 1 week. But apparently, we have to go back and vote on our future meeting dates. And all we have done, as I understand it, Jamie, is move it from May 24th to May 17th.
That's correct.
Which is not the week before Memorial Day. Thank you. I'll be at the lake. I don't mind telling you. I came from the lake. So, is there a motion that we move and revise and extend these dates? Any discussion? Any questions?
Will you be happy?
I'll tell you on the 16th. But thank you. Jamie, we'll do a roll call vote.
Hal Bynum.
Yes.
Taylor Cantrell.
Here.
And I believe Moniz Hegler is logged off. I think she had a hard stop.
Okay.
Okay, Art Sparks,
Yes.
Clinton Smith,
Yes.
Johnny Wolford.
Yes.
That passes. I appreciate it. Chancellor, give you a few minutes for comments.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This has been a great meeting with lots and lots of details and lots of information. The chair asked me to talk just briefly about first 100 days, and I'm about 160 days in now, at about 5 months on the job, and I will just share with you, I had an opportunity during the Flight with Freeman tour. I had a chance to meet with some former chancellors, and Dr. Perry, Margaret Perry, she was there and had lunch and talked, and she said, you know, this job as chancellor is not a job, it's not a career, it's a lifestyle. And so that is definitely what I have learned, you know, what I learned through the fall semester is that it is a lifestyle. So to that end, I had almost 500 meetings this past fall of meeting with different folks, going to all of the regional centers, meeting with alums, having meetings with students who would not turn their head when I walked up to them, having a chance to meet with them, legislators, all sorts of folks to learn as much as I could about the campus, with faculty and staff to learn as much as I could about the campus. And so that was engaging. I want to just say a special acknowledgement to the folks in the advancement area and advancement and alumni, and also for our admissions teams. They let me go back to my old high school in Memphis, previous high school in Memphis, and I had to go check and look on the wall to make sure my picture was not up somewhere for the one who caused the biggest trouble, but had a chance to go do that. So had an opportunity to go lots of different places and to do a lot of listening and to talk about what I was learning about the campus and figure out why the campus is so special. And so I am thankful for that fall semester and what happened there. Another big thing that happened this fall, and we're going to do a really big celebration for the campus, is the reaffirmation of our SAC-COC reaffirmation process, our reaccreditation. It was huge. We attended the conference in Orlando. It went so incredibly well that the vice president for our state, for our area, called us out of the room, and I was there with Dr. Cavalier, Dr. Kolish, Patty Flowers, called us out of the room, and he said, I'm not even gonna take you to the next room because you've passed with such flying colors. There is no need to make you walk this 100 feet that you have to go to get to the next room. And so it is a true testament to the quality of the academic programs, the hard work, and it is a significant process. I would say that SAC-COC is probably one of the more difficult regional agencies to gain accreditation through. And we were able to do it with flying colors, and so that deserves the celebration. We know the last time was not as wonderful, but this time was great, and we ought to just applaud that. So congratulations to several folks who worked on that. We have a new partnership. Most of you know, we have 5 regional campuses, and we have a new partnership now with Ball State Community College in Springfield that will offer some ag courses. I walked into that room thinking that it was going to be a very small room of folks there, and there were over 100 people there at that Ball State Springfield campus there to celebrate this new partnership with UTM. We're going to start with ag courses, and who knows where that's going to go. And so we did a ribbon cut there, and so I'm excited about that partnership with them. We have, in terms of capital projects, Grove Apartments. If you have not driven past Grove Apartments, it is now down. Folks who have a tear moment, I hear a collective sigh from those folks who are Pacers. We actually preserved about 100 bricks, if I'm not mistaken, because we had some alums who wanted to purchase those bricks for memories of Grove, and so that has happened. Hall Moody is the admin building is under construction, and Peter keeps extending the date, but I keep trying to close that date faster and closer. Ian, I think that was their exercise in trying to confuse the chancellor. When I got here, they closed the building, so I didn't know where anybody was at that point, but that is under construction. Another really high-ranked priority for me, and I did mention this, is that business building and trying to get it funded. When we talk about help, we need to make sure that I'm keeping that at the top of President Boyd's list around a priority for UTM, and as we advocate for our institution with the state legislature and those folks who control the dollars, it is the next progressive step for us and what we need to get funded for our campus. And so we're going to continue to work on doing that. We are re-energizing some of the work of our one of our divisions. It's going to be now called the Access and Engagement Division. The premise of it is around student success and ensuring that it does not matter if you're a first-generation college student, if you're a veteran or active duty military, or if you have a head full of hair or bald like me, that you have an opportunity to walk on this campus and have success on this campus. And so they're going to do some first-generation programming. They're going to apply for some federal TRIO programs, dollars. We're going to, do some of that. And last night at the admissions event, I was talking to Will out of our Accessibility Disability Resource Center about some of the stuff we're doing for students with autism. I'm really excited about those new ventures, if you will, around that work. So that is coming. We had also in the fall, we had a renaming of UB1 and UB2, now called Connor Community, named after Dean Harold T. Connor, first African-American administrator at UTM, and also Arnold Pryor Place, you can get tongue-tied saying it, named after Miss Jessie Lou Arnold Pryor, the first African-American student to graduate from UTM. The energy was full during homecoming while we were doing that, and so I was thrilled to be able to participate and to have statements from those folks as we rename those facilities. And then I will also say we are a three-time OVC football champion this year. Congratulations to our football team for winning again the OVC conference and the great work that they have done to continue to stay on top. And so I'm proud of them. One thing we will have to work on, coming up that this group, this advisory group, is going to have to see and approve for us is going to be the new strategic plan. So it is coming. We are at the end of the refresh plan. You'll remember, scheduled to go until 2025. It takes about 8 to 12 months of planning and working because you want to involve the entire campus in the process. And so we're going to begin working on it likely late spring and into the fall semester so that we have something for approval for this group into the new academic year. So the strategic plan is a big thing and a wonderful thing for the campus because you get to talk about who we aspire to be. You get to celebrate those things that you have done really well from the previous plan and then talk about what's next, what is coming, what do we need to work on, how will we engage ourselves in an activity that the entire campus is moving in the same direction. So I'm excited about the work as it relates to the strategic plan. So a lot of things have happened, and we continue to be busy with a talented group of faculty and administrators and a wonderfully talented group of students who are here. We are going to take over the world.
I was worried when President Boyd was here a couple of weeks ago at a basketball game that maybe you had done something wrong, but apparently, apparently everything was fine.
That's probably a good guess that I've done it, so.
You know, I have great respect for a person here who decided that his life was not quite complete with everything he had done, and we have a recent graduate sitting here at this table.
Yes.
That my hat is off. Just for going back, Hal, I mean, I think that's admirable.
Well, thank you, Art. I appreciate that.
I'm very, very appreciative. A couple of other things that are going on. I think the chancellor is in the process of creating a new position called
Yes.
Chief of Staff.
Yes.
And that is open, and I guess at some point in time, a decision will be made. I know that I received a call this morning from Carrie Wexler about starting a committee for the replacement of Charlie Deal, and I think, I'm not sure whether they're still here or not, but I think a couple of the staff here at UT Martin will be co-chairs of that, and there will be a committee appointed, hopefully about the middle of February to get started and published, and I think that's a very positive thing for UT Martin. I appreciate everything that you do. I appreciate everything your staff does. I appreciate everything the university does. I appreciate you guys because, you know, you don't have to do this, but I appreciate you putting your time. Johnny, I appreciate you going last night because, again, that was a good representation of this board. Are there anything else that needs to come before this board? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second. And I guess we have to roll call vote.
It'll be close.
Hal Bynum?
Yes.
Taylor Cantrell?
Yes.
Art Sparks?
Yes.
Clinton Smith?
Yes.
Johnny Wolford?
It did pass.
It did pass.
We are adjourned then. Thank you.